Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk to you quietly, honestly, and from the heart. Not like a lecture. Not like advice shouted at you. Just one voice speaking to another human being who might be feeling tired, lost, or broken inside. If that's you, I want you to stay until the end, because this story is not about giving you motivation for a moment. It's about changing the way you see yourself and your life forever. There was a time when a person woke up every morning feeling heavy without knowing why. Nothing dramatic had happened that day. The sun still rose. The world still moved. People still laughed, worked, posted smiles online. But inside, something felt cracked. Like a quiet room filled with noise no one else could hear. That person tried to explain it to others, but the words never came out right. "I'm fine," they said, even when they weren't. And over time, pretending became a habit. Maybe you know that feeling. You're not falling apart loudly. You're breaking silently. You go through the motions. You do what's expected. You smile when required. But when you're alone, the weight returns. You start questioning yourself. Why am I like this? Why can't I be normal? Why do I feel empty even when things are okay? The person in this story asked those same questions. They thought something was wrong with them. They believed being broken meant being weak. And the more they believed that, the more they hid. They avoided deep conversations. They avoided mirrors. They avoided quiet moments, because silence made everything louder. One evening, after another long day of pretending, they sat alone and felt something shift. Not hope. Not happiness. Just exhaustion. The kind where you don't want to fight anymore. Not against the world. Not against people. Not even against yourself. And in that stillness, a thought appeared, not as a scream, but as a whisper. What if I'm not broken? What if I'm just hurt? That question changed everything. You see, broken implies something that can't be fixed. Something useless. Something beyond repair. But hurt? Hurt is human. Hurt means something mattered. Hurt means you felt deeply. Hurt means you lived. The person began to reflect on their life, not with judgment, but with curiosity. They remembered moments they had ignored for years. Times they gave more than they received. Times they stayed quiet to keep peace. Times they blamed themselves for things that were never their fault. Times they were strong for others but never allowed themselves to be weak. And slowly, they realized something painful but powerful. They weren't broken by one big event. They were worn down by many small moments where they chose survival over truth. Every time they swallowed their feelings to avoid conflict, a small crack formed. Every time they believed they weren't enough, another crack appeared. Every time they compared their life to someone else's highlight reel, the crack spread. Not because they were weak, but because they were human in a world that rewards pretending. Here's something no one tells you: feeling broken is often a sign that you've been strong for too long without rest. The world celebrates resilience, but it forgets to teach recovery. It praises endurance, but ignores healing. So people like you, like the person in this story, keep going even when they're empty. And then they feel guilty for feeling empty. The turning point didn't come from a miracle. It didn't come from a motivational quote or a sudden burst of confidence. It came from a quiet decision. The decision to stop fighting themselves. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" they started asking, "What happened to me?" And that single shift turned blame into understanding. They allowed themselves to feel without labeling those feelings as failures. Sadness was no longer an enemy. Fear was no longer shameful. Confusion was no longer proof of weakness. These emotions became signals, not sentences. One night, they looked at their reflection and said something they had never said before. I'm allowed to be here as I am. Not perfect. Not healed. Not confident. Just present. And that didn't fix everything overnight. Let me be clear about that. Healing is not a movie scene where everything suddenly makes sense. Healing is messy. Some days feel lighter. Some days feel heavy again. But the difference was this. They stopped calling themselves broken on the heavy days. They began to notice how harsh their inner voice had been. How it spoke to them in ways they would never speak to someone they loved. So they practiced something unfamiliar: kindness toward themselves. Not big acts. Small ones. Resting without guilt. Saying no without explaining. Crying without apologizing. Sitting in silence without distraction. These small acts didn't look powerful from the outside, but inside, they were revolutionary. Over time, something unexpected happened. The cracks didn't disappear, but light started coming through them. The very places that once felt like proof of failure became sources of depth. They became more empathetic. More aware. More grounded. They listened better. They judged less. They understood pain without needing words. And here's the part that matters most: they realized their broken feeling wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of a more honest one. If you're listening right now and thinking, "This sounds like me," I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind in life. You are not weak for struggling. You are not damaged beyond repair. You are responding normally to things that were hard, confusing, or overwhelming. The world often tells us to move on quickly, to be positive, to stay strong. But real strength sometimes looks like slowing down. It looks like admitting you're tired. It looks like choosing yourself even when no one claps for it. The person in this story didn't suddenly become fearless. They didn't wake up every day excited. But they stopped abandoning themselves. And that changed how life felt. They learned that healing is not about becoming a new person. It's about returning to who you were before you learned to doubt yourself. Before you learned to shrink. Before you learned to hide. Think about the younger version of you. Not to feel sad, but to remember. Remember how curious you were. How deeply you felt. How you believed your voice mattered. That version of you is not gone. They're just waiting for permission to come back. You don't need to have everything figured out to begin. You don't need confidence to take the next step. You just need honesty. Honesty with yourself about where you are. Some days, progress looks like growth. Other days, it looks like survival. Both count. Both matter. The person eventually understood that being broken inside didn't mean they were failing at life. It meant life had shaped them. And shaped things can still be beautiful. Sometimes even more so. Scars tell stories. Cracks show history. And depth often comes from pressure. If you're carrying pain right now, it doesn't define your future. It informs it. If you're feeling lost, it doesn't mean you're off path. Sometimes being lost is how you discover what truly matters to you. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow people, places, and versions of yourself that no longer fit. You are allowed to rebuild slowly, imperfectly, in your own way. One of the most powerful moments in the story came when the person stopped waiting to feel ready to live fully. They realized readiness is a myth. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Healing happens while you're living, not before. They began doing small things that felt true to them. Not impressive. Just true. And those small choices added up. They built trust with themselves again. And maybe that's what you need most right now. Not answers. Not motivation. Trust. Trust that you can handle what comes next. Trust that you are learning, even when it hurts. Trust that this version of you is not the final version. If you feel broken inside, please remember this: broken things can be rebuilt, but living things heal. And you are living, breathing, becoming. This story doesn't end with perfection. It ends with peace. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from no longer fighting who you are. The kind that comes from knowing your worth isn't based on how productive, happy, or put together you appear. You don't need to fix yourself to deserve love, rest, or understanding. You deserve those things now. So if today is heavy, let it be heavy without turning it into a verdict about your life. If you're tired, rest without guilt. If you're confused, allow yourself time. Your story is still being written. And this chapter, as painful as it feels, is shaping a depth in you that will one day help you understand yourself and others in ways you can't imagine yet. You are not broken. You are becoming. And if no one has told you this lately, let me say it now. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your life matters. Even on the days it doesn't feel like it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, healing doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means learning to live fully, honestly, and gently, even with it. If this story touched something inside you, take that as a sign. A sign that there is still something alive within you. And that is more than enough to begin again.